And it's not easy. Like, you have to put yourself out there. You have to be vulnerable. You have to walk into a space where you feel like everybody's staring at you and you don't know what to say and you kind of feel silly, but it'll be the best thing you've ever done.
Welcome to the Trailblazers show. I am your host, Megan Kaptein, and today I am featuring a special guest, Kim Okabe. Kim has been riding motorcycles since 2015. She's put on more than 200,000 kilometers on two wheels. Kim has turned her passion for motorcycles into a career. She currently leads a global collective of women riders where she empowers women to get on their motorcycles and ride. Kim, I'm excited to have you on my show today.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to get started by digging right into your motorcycle journey. You've been riding since 2015?
That's correct.
Awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got started?
It's, I've dabbled in dirt bikes and things like that, but I never really took it seriously. My mom grew up around motorcycles, so my uncle had always had a few bikes in the garage, and she loved it. She'd always take us kind of on the trails and stuff when we were younger, but it's been years. Like, she hasn't had an actual motorcycle in quite some time, and as she got older, she really started to get on me about getting my bike and getting my license, and she'd always say, like, we're so similar, and I know how much it's going to mean to you, and being on the road by yourself and having the wind go through your hair and just kind of, it's just that wind therapy is just something that, and I understand now how hard it is to explain to somebody, but she was just on me, and it was one year, I guess it was kind of around Christmas time, 2014, that she was just really pressuring me, and it was early that next year that I bought a bike. Of course, that's the first thing you do. Then I bought the course. Then I got my license, and I had everything kind of like all rolled up, and 2 weeks after I finished the course and jumped on my bike, she went in for a routine surgery, and it went terribly wrong, and she never came out. And I didn't know what else to do. I kind of jumped on my bike with very little experience that I had, and brought my backpack and didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to do, but it just didn't matter. That's the only thing that I wanted to do. So I got on my bike, and that year I ended up putting on probably, 50, 60,000 kilometers, and it just kind of, it became the only way that I felt that I could really cope with it. I don't know if coping is the right word, because I don't know if it was more of running away from it, but I felt like I was with her when I was on my bike. So that's the only place I really wanted to be, and kind of the rest is history. Now it's a huge part of my life.
Thanks for sharing that, Kim. Well, thanks to your mom for introducing you to motorcycles, and if it wasn't for her, we probably wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation today. You said you put on about 60,000 kilometers just in the first year alone of riding. Where did you go during that year?
Oh my goodness. That first year, I honestly never really had a destination. It was really funny. I love staying in low budget roadside motels, and just the weirder the better. Like, I get off on those. I love them. But I would, spend my mornings, like I would wake up in the morning and I would look on a map and find the twistiest road that hopefully didn't turn into dirt. And I would just start going, and it's funny because when you're on the road, especially when you're by yourself, like every gas station that you stop at, somebody comes over to talk to you. They see your license plate, they see a, lone woman on the road, and they just wanna chat and know your story and kind of figure it out. And the more I rode and started talking to people, the more I realized that I was hitting bucket list places. You know what I mean? That people hadn't even had a chance to be on and had lived in the area for a long time and things like that. And
this is in Canada, or did you?
It was pretty much just all over the U.S. I really like Idaho. That's probably one of my favorite places to ride, like Missoula and Lolo Pass and the 12. And it was pretty incredible.
I haven't done too much riding in the States, but I'd definitely love to do that in the future.
It's pretty special, for sure.
That. And have you gone up north? You're originally from Prince George?
I'm from Prince George. Okay. No, I haven't. I was actually planning this year on going up. I was born in Prince Rupert, and I've always wanted to ride up to Prince Rupert and then take the ferry down to the island and then kind of do that little loop back. But this year it just didn't end up working out. But that's definitely something I really, really want to do. But I haven't honestly ridden a lot in Canada since I started riding. Usually the U.S. or Mexico is kind of my go-to spots. But mainly because I'm based now out of Salt Lake City, so that's usually my stomping grounds. I love going down to California. And it's just, our weather's just so unpredictable here. So it's nice to always like, I don't mind riding when the weather's not that great, but if you have a light at the end of that tunnel when you're heading south, it just makes it a lot better.
No doubt. Yeah, you're definitely right about riding in British Columbia. You've got to be prepared for the rain. Even if it starts off sunny, you never know. You got to have the good rain gear in your kit.
Yeah. The one thing about BC for me is just the animals too. Like I've always wanted to go up to Alaska, and I've just, it's terrifying when you hear people, something happening, and it's unpredictable, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And
it's a real risk for sure. Definitely a risk. You've had a couple of accidents over the last few years, and yet you're still riding. So what was your process for overcoming the fear of riding after those accidents?
It's funny because, my first accident was I was at work and I was riding home from work and I was 3 blocks from my house. That's, of course, how it happens. And I was just going straight up Main, honestly, and there was a left turner that turned left right in front of me. They turned left. I had room to maneuver around, but when they saw me, they panicked. He was quite a young guy, and he just slammed on the brakes. So there was nothing I could do. I fishtailed and ended up snapping my tib fib, just broke my foot off. And but yeah, that was funny. It was because it was obviously my first accident and it was pretty bad, but I was so terrified because everybody, the first thing they say to you is like, oh, you're ever going to ride again? Oh, you're ever going to do it? And like that was never a question that crossed my mind. Like the reasons why I ride is so much more than just to look cool or, have a motorcycle kind of thing. I would never ever let it go. But the more that people were asking me that, the more I got kind of anxious because it was, I would drive in a car within that 3 block parameter and my stomach would, shoot up into my chest, as if you just like jumped off a cliff or something. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I think it was like a week and a half. It was before the 2-week mark. I got on my bike with a cane. I still had a cast on, and I got on my bike with a cane and I just drove around that 3 block circle, and every time my stomach would go, and I would just keep going, and I would keep going, and I would only stop if I was near a wall so I can, hold on to it and not fall over. And it was like, if you could have saw me at the time, you would have been like, you are insane. But it got better every single time, that feeling just like, it got better, and it gave me hope. Like I didn't need to keep going until that would go away. I knew that wouldn't happen, but I knew that, the more I did it, that I would always be able to get over it, essentially.
You were a brave woman, Kim. So you had mentioned that you've been down to Mexico a few times, and I think I read somewhere that you did that in a matter of just a couple of days.
Yeah, well, this last Mexico trip, both times I iron butted down, or the last couple times, but I normally don't iron butt with another person. Like normally I only iron butt when I'm with myself. But this last time I went with a girlfriend, and we always joke around. Like she'll be like, hey, I got a week off. What do you want to do? We're like, go down to Mexico? And like we're always joking around. And this time we did. I think she had 6 days off. And we jumped on the bike and ripped down. And we ended up going down to, I've gone down to Ensenada a bunch of times, but I'd never been down to San Felipe. So we went over to San Felipe, and it was absolutely amazing. But when we left, I think we left and it was like 110 degrees, and then it just got hotter and hotter and hotter. So the first day we only made it to Bishop, California, and then the second day we rode from Bishop home. So we left at like 7 a.m. and we got home at 2 in the morning. Yeah, we were planning on staying in Portland, and then we had never been on the 5, like we had always taken like back roads and nicer roads. And then once we hit the 5 at sundown, it was like, we're so close, right? we're just right there. But yeah, good for her. My girlfriend is just a powerhouse. I just taught her about roadside noodles and heat packs and yeah.
So when you say iron butt, is there like an official amount of mileage you have to put on?
It's 1,000 miles, so it's like just like over 1,600 kilometers.
And you have to do that within the period of like a certain time frame?
I'm assuming it's 24 hours.
Wow. So you've done a few of those already?
Yeah, we do a lot. Well, Salt Lake City is pretty much like 1,000 miles from here. So, and I do that all the time. That's where my head office is. So,
can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing down there?
So I run a global women's motorcycle collective that was started by one of my really good girlfriends called the Litas, and we are in, I think 34 countries. There's over 400 branches. Almost 30,000 riders, and it's what makes it different from any other club is that we are open to everybody. There's no initiation, there's no fees, it doesn't matter what your level is, it doesn't matter what you ride. We're all just about encouraging women to get on bikes, and we want to try to remove as many barriers as we can, essentially. So just be welcoming, be supportive, and that's all kind of we require. It's just, create that supportive community, like create what you wish you had when you first joined, and the people that have the Litas when they do join and know how much it means to them just want to give that to other people too. So it's just kind of like passing it on and hopefully making it more welcoming and easier for women to get on. And
that's awesome. And there's actually a branch here in Vancouver as well. And what's your involvement in the local branch?
So the local branch I took over in 2019. I had already been working for the Litas prior to that, and but the one that was here wasn't quite that active. So in 2019 I took it over, and it's been absolutely phenomenal. There's over 500 members. And with the Litas, you just have to do, at least one ride or meetup per month, and everybody volunteers their time to kind of bring the community together and do what they can do. So this year actually was the first time, just in the last month, I actually decided to step down, just because I don't have as much time as I wish I did, and also too, throughout the last few years, it's brought so many incredible women into my life, and I kind of just want to be able to pass the torch and have other women create that same tribe for themselves and go from there, kind of thing. So. And
so has somebody already stepped up to the plate to fill your very big shoes?
Yeah, well, we have two women that have come forward, and I have two girlfriends of mine that were helping me out with it before that, so they're probably going to stay on, and we'll meet in the new year and get it rolling.
Well, I personally appreciate your leadership. I've come to a few of the events here locally, and it's really neat to see the community grow, and it really is just a very supportive environment and super fun. How did you get involved in the community aspect of things? So I know personally when I started to ride, I didn't know any women who rode. Was that sort of your introduction to the community element of riding? Was it through the Litas?
It was kind of just the Litas. I did grow up with a friend of mine I knew from Prince George, and he runs, a moto shop out here and things like that. And I have other guys in my community that I'm friends with just from riding. But when it comes to the Litas, when we would be on our rides with Jess and down in Salt Lake City, and every city that we would be staying a night at, we'd always message ahead and say hey, we're going to be in Denver in 2 hours. And the message back would always be hey, meet us at Blue Buck at 7 o'clock. And we were Blue Buck, okay. So we'd show up there and there'd be 40 women there. And then, the next day it was the same thing, okay, we're going to be in whatever, in Texas or in this place. And every time you'd show up at this bar and there would just be 10 to 50 women there just ready to have a beer and, offer you a place to stay and whatever you kind of needed. It was absolutely incredible. And when I came home, I was just Vancouver needs this. And it was so crazy how quickly it kind of came together, because I think it's, like you said, it's something that we all need, we all want. We just don't know how to get it, and Litas just kind of gives you the opportunity. It's just kind of you put the name on something, and if you're aware of the Litas, that it's going to be, very welcoming and open, and So everyone that just kind of shows up fell in love and just stayed around. So it was pretty special.
I understand that you're also really into cold plunges. Can you tell me a little bit about that? How did you get into that, and what's the point of that?
I don't know. I've always kind of been very intrigued with like Wim Hof and breath work in general, and essentially started doing breath work when I'd be doing my iron bets, and I'd be really, really freezing and really tired, and I just realized how much further you can push your body when you're actually just like honing in on your breath and kind of really focusing inwards, and it saved me a lot of times when the temperatures dropped quite far and things like that. And then when I came back into the city, it's gotten quite big now, especially with like the saunas and the cold dips and things like that. But years ago, it wasn't really that big, but there was a few little communities. My girlfriend Natalia started this cold plunge community, and it was just kind of like, it would be random. Like it would just be once a week or sometimes like once a month, but it would be like, hey, do you want to go out to Lynn Valley next week? Or hey, do you want to go to Kitts Beach on next Sunday? And they would just kind of throw it out there, and people would be like, okay. And sometimes 2 people would show up, and sometimes 20 people would show up. But the people that showed up were people that could get a message the night before and be like, okay. Yeah, so they were just always the greatest people, Like, it was just people that were open to anything and wanted to meet strangers and jump in the cold water and get awkward and, and you get into these weird conversations when you're in the water, and everybody's just so vulnerable and open, and then you come out and you hug and you go about your day, and it's just it's a really special thing. I absolutely love it. I love the community, and I love how big it's getting and how amazing. But that's the other thing with the cold plunges is, no matter who came in, we would always start out, like if you've never done a cold plunge before, most of the time they would go in the water without doing any breath work because they didn't know the difference. And they would be in and out, and it would be like dip and come out, or maybe they'd stay in 30 seconds, or if they're lucky, like a minute. And then it would be like, okay, let's do a bit of breath work. And whether it was like a minute or 2 or whatever, and they'd go back in and they'd stay in for 3 minutes or 4 minutes or 5 minutes. And it was just like incredible seeing the difference, not just on me, but in people like right in front of their eyes going like, oh my gosh, no, I'm still in here. Like, this is good. And I think it's really neat, but it definitely helps on the bike.
Yeah, I can imagine. What other kind of techniques or tips do you have for long distance riding?
I don't know. I'm a weird one. I honestly just got me AirPod Pros last year or this year, and it's the first time that I've ever listened to music in my helmet.
Okay, so, welcome to the new world of.
But it's mainly because it's got the noise cancellation, right. Which before I once you start going at high speeds, you really can't hear the music properly. Or I like to listen to podcasts, and you couldn't really know what was going on, and it was just more frustrating than a positive thing. So I would always just be like, forget it, and I never wanted to do it. So I sing a lot in my helmets, like not well, but I do sing, I scream. Like it just, when you're on the road and you're by yourself, you get weird, you cry sometimes for no reason. Sometimes it's happy tears. Sometimes you just like let it out. Sometimes you're frustrated. And it's funny because when you go through little things on the road, it's so accentuated. Like, like you'll just kind of be frustrated. Then like a bee will hit you. You're like, oh God. And you're by yourself, and it's just entertaining. And I don't know. I'm a little dramatic, but I don't know. I just say it's just have fun. Be weird. Be yourself. Nobody sees you. Except when you forget that you don't have a tinted visor on, and then everybody sees you and you're like, oh my God, how long has this been happening? Anyways, but.
I do think that little helmet, it's sort of a bit of an incubator that you can just experience whatever is happening to you authentically. Yeah. Yeah, and it is quite therapeutic. Like it's almost a form of meditation. I mean, it's a cliche to say that, but I definitely found that to be the case as well for myself. I also lost a loved one. A good friend of mine passed away last year, and thank you. And riding back from his funeral, I was in Kelowna, and just like along the Coquihalla, at one point, all the emotions that I had been feeling during the funeral, I couldn't really cry during the funeral, but on the way back, it was just like an outpouring of grief, and it just being in that environment, it was like, it just felt like the most natural thing to be able to do that.
The one thing about your bike is that it teaches you to like, you have to be in the moment. You can't be like thinking about what you're gonna do or worrying about the past, or like, you just have to be in the moment. And that happens, you know, that when it comes to like being on the road, and then when it comes to just being you and being in life. So it's just like, I need to be right here on this turn, looking at that tree, watching over that car, doing this, but also feeling what I'm feeling right now. And what I'm feeling right now is hurt, or is laughter, or is joy, or whatever it is. But you just have to be. You can't hide it. You can't think like, oh, I'm just gonna cry later or worry about this later. And if you're trying to hide it, you're only hiding it from yourself. So that's even sillier.
Exactly. Motorcycles have been such a big part of your life, both on a personal level and obviously also a professional level. What do you think you would have been doing with your life if you hadn't been introduced to motorcycles?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I don't know. I grew up in the industry, like ever since I was 14, dishwashing, in fridge storage. But yeah, I've always kind of worked in restaurants, and I did a lot of consulting and managed places. And I like the back end side of things when it comes to restaurants. I like the spreadsheets. I love the numbers. It, like the stuff that people don't normally like to do. I like those kind of things. So yeah, I would probably still somewhat be in that, but who knows?
Yeah, it's always kind of hard to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
For myself, I can't imagine what my life would have been like without motorcycles, because it's just such a big part of my everyday life. So, but it's sometimes an interesting exercise just to go there and.
Yeah, that's wild. Nobody's ever asked me that. It's funny because the one thing that I always think about is the people that you've met through riding. Like, riding is such a big part of my life, or both of our lives, but the people that I've met through riding are like unbelievable. Like, they're my best friends, they're my family, they're kind of everything to me. And we say that to each other all the time. Like, we're out, we'll look at each other and be like, what were we doing before we had each other? And it's just, because it's also a different type of friendship that you have, right? Like, it's just, I don't know, I find the bonds are a lot tighter, and people are just a lot more open and honest and real and vulnerable. And
very vulnerable. I mean, you're putting your lives at risk, and you're with these people, and I think it takes a certain kind of person to hurl their body down the highway at 100 and something kilometers an hour. I think there's an inherent vulnerability in doing that, and it is something that you really don't understand unless you're on a bike. And
yeah, it's so hard to explain.
Just going back to what you said a moment ago, you said you've been working since you were 14.
Yeah, I was working in the restaurants. I was dishwashing at 14, and then moving up to the restaurants, and hosted. I think I did every position in the restaurants, even backup host. But I moved out quite young. I moved out when I was about 13, and then I was kind of in and out and working hard. I started going to Capilano when I was 15.
Capilano College, or?
Yeah, I got accepted as a mature student because I was out of school for 2 years. I started going there at 15, and I did everything quite young.
What did you study when you were at Capilano College?
It was mainly just business administration, accounting.
So all those spreadsheets you mentioned that you like, you found your niche.
I love it. I like definitive answers. I'm really not good at like English and things like that, but if they're definitive number answers, I really like that.
Is that a big part of what you do right now?
Not really, no. No, we have a wonderful, well, on the Litas side of things, it's not really money side, but we have Okabe, which is the clothing line, and so one of my best girlfriends is the CFO for that, so she tags me in on the number side of things, but yeah.
So what's next for you, Kim? What's in the future? I think I read that you have a trip coming up to Belize, a motorcycle trip? Or?
Well, this year's going to be pretty crazy. We, with Okabe, we're going to start doing shows. We're going to do a show in LA, and then Paradise Roadshow in January. Mama Tried in Milwaukee in February. March I'll be in Belize. April will be in Portland, and so it's just going to be a lot of road time, which will be good, but I'm excited about.
Very cool. Well, I mean, it sounds like a good fit for you since you enjoy life on the road, it sounds like.
Yes, absolutely.
Very cool. Can you tell me more about the Belize trip?
So we have a woman, Emma, who started the Litas Belize out there, and she contacted me, and essentially, like, she started the Litas Belize because obviously riding's a big part of her life, but there is not that many riders out there, so she was like, it's really hard for me to kind of get groups together, but I basically run like an adventure touring company. I have all of these, dual sport and dirt bikes that I can rent, and I also have a crash pad that's essentially like a big hostel that everybody can rent out and kind of be together. So she was just basically like, I have everything for everybody if they want to come here, and please do it. So some members of the Litas Portland went out there. I think there was 8 of them that went out there. Another girlfriend of ours, I don't know if you know G, that lives up in Terrace. She went up there and did a trip last year.
Very cool.
And then, so this year I was like, I want to do it. And you can, plan up to, I think she has 11 bikes. So we had 11 of us. I basically put it out there and 11 of us booked our flights within 10 minutes. Like, I didn't think it was going to get picked up so bad, but everyone's like, yeah. But, going out there, and the reason why I've always wanted to go to Belize, but the flights down there are like pretty hefty. Like, they're like 30-hour flights kind of thing. But Seattle just started flying direct. So I was like, once that happened, I was like, okay, we're going to Belize. And she does a lot of, the cultural side of things too, which I love. Like, yes, it is a lot of like dirt bikings and discovering like the mines and stuff, but then you also go out to these, native communities and learn how to make their traditional food and pick medicine in the fields. And, it's all about Belize. And that's what I really, really love about it. So, yeah.
Sounds amazing. I somehow missed the invitation for that.
Sorry. I put it up on social media and I had to take it down within 10 minutes because I was like, oh God, it's booked up. And there's still people that are like, can I be on a wait list? Like, what is this? But when I do it, I really want to put together kind of a whole thing about the trip so just people can, essentially know exactly what they're going to need to spend and what it entails and things like that, and they can just do it.
We'll definitely have to reconnect after that trip. Absolutely. So I want to revisit the idea of these iron butt rides. I've never done one quite like that. I think the longest I've done is about 1,000 kilometers, and I guess that is an iron butt? You said 1,000?
1,000 miles.
1,000 miles. Okay.
1,600, 1,700.
I did not earn the title of iron butt, so I did 1,000 kilometers, and that, I think my body was just like, I was like, that's it for me, that's my max. But do you do like yoga or some sort of exercise to be able to keep your body in shape to be able to do those kind of long rides?
I definitely use all my pegs. I think that's the one thing that really saves me is I'll put my feet on the back passenger's peg and ride my bike like a sport bike sometimes. Then other times I'll have my feet up, and then other times I'll have them out, and sometimes I'm leaning on my tank. Like, if I were to have a camera on me doing those things, I probably would never do it again. I'd be like, that's what I look like? But I usually don't stay in a position for more than like 5 minutes, and I'll always just kind of be switching it up and finding something different.
Yeah, that makes sense, kind of keeping the movement.
Yeah. I just actually bought heated gloves. Because I was like, I've been thinking about heating grips for the longest time, but then now that I have 3 bikes, I'm like, well, I can't. If I do it on one, I have to do it on all of them. Right. So I was like, I don't know if heated grips on a chopper is going to be a thing. So I bought heated gloves. They have little battery packs, and it lasts 12 hours, and they're amazing.
Are they motorcycle-specific gloves?
They're kind of everything gloves, but they were made for motorcycles because they do have like the touchpad and then the grip on them, and they get really high and they singe, and yeah, it's great.
Heated gear is such a game changer when it comes to riding in the cold. I would say that's like the one thing I would advise anyone who wants to ride through the winter is to get heated gear. So I'd love to close off, Kim, with hearing some advice you might have for people, specifically women who might want to get into riding. What would you tell someone who is interested in starting to ride a motorcycle?
If you truly want to get into riding, I always say, please take a course. There's so many things that you're going to learn in a course that you don't want to have to learn on your own, on the road. And you're going to be put into situations that you want to be put in a controlled environment. With that too, it's also a great way to meet people. But my biggest thing is, you can take the course and buy the bike and do everything that you want to do, but if you don't really have people to around that are going to ride with you, it's just not as fun, you know? So being able to go out there and find those bike communities, whether it's Litas, whether it's just a Facebook forum, you know, there's Bike Life, there's a bunch of different, you know, motorcycle communities in every city. You just really have to look for them. And it's not easy. Like, you have to put yourself out there. You have to be vulnerable. You have to walk into a space where you feel like everybody's staring at you and you don't know what to say and you kind of feel silly, but it'll be the best thing you've ever done. And it's so, so, so worth it. So just, if you do anything vulnerable in your life, just make it that. And go meet your community, because it'll change your life.
Well, I think that's the perfect note to end on, Kim. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today and sharing your inspiring story.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on the show, and we'll definitely have to connect again after your Belize trip to hear all about that.